30 and we're recording too. We're excited to talk with Ryan Surprise this morning as a part of the 2021 Fox Cities Book Festival. The Fox Cities Book Festival runs from October 13th to 17th, and we're definitely excited to have you here with us. It's the 14th annual year for the festival, so thanks for joining. The Fox Cities Book Festival is a great collaboration with a group of people from the school districts, the libraries that are local, the local bookstores. We're fortunate to receive grants and to have donations both in financial ways and in volunteer efforts. So thank you to everyone who makes it possible. Our group definitely believes that access to the arts for everyone is important, and we like to make sure that the events do not have financial barriers so that everyone can be a part of it. So if you're able to donate online, we have the foxcitiesbookfestival.org and our Facebook, which is facebook.com/foxcitiesbookfestival. If you're a fan of QR codes and would like to donate, that's what our dino there is for. If you'd like to mail a check, definitely there's the address, but also if you'd like to get involved with the Fox Cities Book Festival, learn more, or even volunteer or become a board member, you can email us at info@foxcitiesbookfestival.org. We'd love to have you. And just like all virtual events, we want this to be a respectful environment. Any harassment, it's not allowed. So we have our code of conduct and statement of responsibility, but do know if we have any misbehavior, you will be booted out of the session. So let's be kind to each other. And as the event goes on, if you would like to send any questions to Ryan, you can send that in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom. Or if you're watching on Facebook, you can just send a comment. We will be watching, and then you can do that at any time. But then at the end, we'll have some time just for specific Q&A. So that'll be about 10-15 minutes before the end of our session today. And now it's the moment you've been waiting for. First of all, I'm going to introduce Josie Aumann. She's going to be in conversation with Ryan. She is an English teacher, mother, wife, and dog owner living in Appleton. She earned her master's degree in English from UW-Oshkosh and has been teaching at Kimberly High School for a decade. She is so thrilled to chat with a former student about his fabulous book. Welcome, Josie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as Aubrey had introduced, I'm excited to get to talk to Ryan today. Ryan was one of my students, one of my first years of teaching. And so it's so great to get to talk with him and learn about how he's made his dream come true of writing and how he's continuing to do so. Ryan Surprise is a Wisconsin-based writer who's traveled 3 continents, but always makes time for exploring the natural beauty of the Northern Midwest. He holds 2 bachelor's degrees in professional writing and Spanish from Carroll University. He's a marketing extraordinaire and novice cross-country skier. He's an avid history buff with a penchant for writing historical and Western fiction. When not busy writing, he enjoys hiking, swimming, and going to the movies. He has a film review blog called Rye Guys Review, which informs readers of the latest and greatest that Hollywood has to offer. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. So I really loved reading your book. And
thanks so much.
It was a novel, but also kind of felt like a collection of short stories as I went along. How do you describe stories of a hangman to others?
I try to put it simply as a Western set in the Wyoming territory about an executioner who starts to question the death penalty.
Yes.
Yeah, and then each chapter is kind of its own case of the executed. So kind of gives its own, kind of like that short story feel, but it's also a novel that follows the protagonist.
Yes. And I remember a novel you were working on in high school was also a Western. So this has been a genre that's interested you for a long time. In what ways does the Western genre appeal to your imagination?
I think just as a writer, Westerns are full of that primary conflict that you need to tell a story. Especially because the Western is kind of about society starting from scratch. So you have to ask a lot of those big questions about the meaning of justice, what is Law and Order, what's the price of all that, and then so many other themes. So there's just a lot to explore, and that just makes it easy to write, and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. What themes are present in your book, Stories of a Hangman? I have it here with me.
Oh, thank you. I would definitely say a search for justice and trying to find out what that means, along with the death penalty itself. But I think there are so many different branches to that question that come down to the role of the state when it comes to penalties like that, but also, how do we stop evil from happening along the same lines? So there's a lot of different themes rolled into that.
Yeah. I thought it was cool, the perspective you chose for your book, having it be from the hangman's perspective, this executioner's perspective, because usually when I've seen Western movies or read other stories, they're usually this flat character in the background. What, I guess, gave you the idea, or what kind of inspired you to explore their perspective as the main perspective?
Yeah, I think executioners are interesting people because that's a pretty heavy load to carry around with you.
Yeah.
And I assume most are either desensitized to it or they believe in what they're doing. But I thought if we just kind of looked at it from another angle, somebody who really values human life, but also understands that there's a need for justice or some penalty for people who do wrong, like that conflict really interested me. And that's really an inspiration for the book.
Yeah. What research did you conduct for this novel?
Well, I set in the Wyoming territory, so I learned a lot about that, a lot about Wyoming state history, learned about historical events that happened there that kind of inspired some of the cases, some of the chapters in the book. So, I mean, I'm a history buff by nature, so I've always been kind of accruing, especially American history, but also, the push west. So it kind of came naturally to me too.
Yeah. Was there anything specific that fascinated you about the time period when you were researching?
I think kind of going on the themes of the Western, that there wasn't really a justice system in place, or really any system, because people were building new towns and they were trying to have peace and order. So I think just along those lines of how do you start society from scratch, or you just people, it's just a land rush, so everybody gets a piece of land there. So just how does that all get organized, and just hearing the different stories about that.
Yeah. In the start of your book, the hangman fondly shares about his teacher and the influence other literature had on him. How has classic literature influenced you personally, or influenced your writing?
Yeah, I mean, I love storytelling in any form, so just good memories. And I think really what we want to do with the protagonist, along with their journey, in whatever book it is kind of a mission of self-discovery. So as you go along with them, you kind of see, well, was this right? Is this wrong? Do I agree with this? Do I agree with that? But also you discover more about yourself through them, or at least parallel with them. And that's always been really fascinating for me, just as a person, but as a writer too. Just the big advice they give you is, to be a good writer, you have to read a lot.
Yes.
So I think that a lot of the books that I like the most are very thought-provoking, and they do concern big questions. Like some of them I read in high school that just stayed with me, like Brave New World, kind of security versus freedom, and how like kind of the dystopia, how do you avoid that with human freedom. And then Johnny Got His Gun, which is a anti-war novel. So those definitely stuck with me for sure. But yeah, there are tons that I just love to read and think about those questions.
Yeah. What was it like writing a book that featured so much tragedy? It really weighs on the hangman's character. Did that reach you in any way as the writer?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I would say I have a pretty high threshold for tragedy. But I think there's a lot of hope in the book too.
Yes.
A search for meaning and justice in that. So it,
Mhm.
I guess one kind of helped outweigh the other. But yeah, I think that there's always hope in the book. So, it's not too heavy of a load.
Yeah, that's a great way. As a reader of the book, I got that as well. So that message got across with the character. I really liked that he doesn't just kind of go along with things because they're the way they are, but he is constantly thinking about it and questioning it, and he's willing to take a stand for what he believes in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, and in Stories of a Hangman, that main character is nameless and he doesn't share very much about himself. I mean, he does, but also most of the book is him reflecting on the people that he has hanged and if justice was there or not, sort of thing. But still, we get to know him then through his reflections there and a little bit about his background too. Did you build the hangman's character beyond what's shared in the book? And are there any details about him you'd want to share with us?
That's a great question. I would say so. That there's more to him as a character than besides the book. I think I mean, probably the most important aspects of him are shared in the book about
Yeah.
who he is. But I think that I definitely want readers to think of in their own way. What was he like before? What is he,
Yeah.
like after? So I would say that's one of my favorite things about books is that you can use your own imagination to create the characters, and
Mhm.
a lot of it, what isn't said, is also important to that. So I guess I'll just let people use their imaginations to. I don't
Yeah.
want to snuff out any creative ideas that they might have and hold on to about the character. So
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds great. Um, what was the easiest story within Stories of a Hangman to write?
probably the prologue. I think that was just kind of a
Mhm.
spark of inspiration. I probably finished it in an afternoon. So
Oh,
I think,
nice.
yeah, and I think some
Mhm.
of my best writings in there too. So I think that was definitely the easiest one, just to start off the story, and then I would come with the other chapters later on down the road.
Yeah, yeah. When did you start writing this book?
Uh, Late December in 2018, and then
Mhm.
I signed with my publisher in September or October of 2020. So almost a
Mhm.
2-year process from start to finish.
Yeah. What were the most difficult stories to write in your book?
Um, I would say I didn't write them all in order. I kind of switched them around in order too, just to kind of
Mhm.
get a flow of it. But I would say uh, the hanging of a liar was the toughest one, not because of anything in the subject matter or trying to get the right story, but I was talking with my editor about this, and she said this one just doesn't fit into the whole scheme of things. So I just had
Mhm.
to erase it and start from scratch. So that was, and I had already written probably 30,000 words plus of these
Yeah.
stories. So I'm just like, okay, so how do I inspire myself to keep writing? And that's
Yeah.
just something you have to do as a writer, is just, take your lumps and start over.
Yeah, there's ebb and flow to it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, and there's lots of characters in this novel. What character did you relate to the most?
Um, I mean, I think there are aspects that definitely I'm part of different characters, or at least there are aspects that I can relate to in all the different characters. But I would say probably either the Hangman or uh, Sheriff Hightower in The Hanging of a Madman, just kind of
Uh-huh.
searching for truth and justice and all that. I think that's definitely a journey that's worth aspiring to.
Yeah, yeah. Um, For those of us that are new to the Western genre, what were some Western tropes that you followed in this? And then you can also share with us Western tropes that maybe you departed from the tradition a little bit and made it your own.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question because there's a lot of traditional Western tropes and then like anti-Western tropes as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got a good mix of both. Ones that I think are more traditional would be, there's one chapter where they rob a train. So that one's, there's a shootout with the lawmen. So stuff like that, I think is definitely more traditional than other ones. Kind of the idea of the cowboy being the hero is not always the story, especially if you look at historical, texts, that they would get paid at the end of the trail, and once they got paid, they were kind of a riotous bunch. They would kind of, how should I put it? Sometimes they would, trash the town that they were in, and so not always the most heroic behavior. So just kind of seeing that it's not always black and white, but there's a bit of grit too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought you did a great job of that with other characters or how certain stories went too, where it went differently than maybe usually it goes in the Western story, because the characters weren't just flat or expected. They had aspects to them, as individuals too.
Yeah,
I enjoyed reading that too for that reason.
I'm glad.
And you mentioning the cowboys, the riotous behavior you're mentioning did make me think of, alcohol impacts a lot of the characters. Was that something of the time period, part of the culture at the time, or what did you kind of learn from research about how to involve alcohol into the stories?
Sure. I think it's kind of hard to compare to today because it's obviously different cultures, different technologies that people relied on too. And I would say, a lot of these guys were doing hard work all day, from sun up till sundown. So, drinking was kind of a stress relief mechanism for them. And sometimes that led to abuse. And I think that there was a bit of a pushback to that later on. But during the time period the book takes was kind of the start of the Prohibition era. There were a lot of those protests starting about then, and then they eventually got to be more powerful later on in American history. So I think there was a bit of cause and effect, to and fro pushback there. So, it just depends on the person that you were talking about, but there were definitely a lot of factors into their daily lives.
Yeah. In the prologue, the Hangman says, "When I was young, I used to believe that evil was fixed. However, as I grew older, I saw that it is strange and ever changing. Even the best of us can fall. Even those who believe in the law are punished for their unexpected infractions." Did you find this passage to be true?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something you realize, especially growing up, that people aren't all they are cracked up to be, or there's sometimes people make mistakes that you never thought would be possible. So I think that that's definitely a part of the gray area. It's not always black and white for everybody. It's not just good and evil, but some people do, slip like in between. So I think that's just an interesting aspect of human nature.
Mm-hmm. How does the general idea of justice in Westerns and your novel compare to the general idea of justice now?
Yeah, I would say then it was about controlling a lot of violence and trying to dissuade that as much as possible, which is why the death penalty became very popular. Just trying to quell that. And nowadays we don't live in a Western, society. We're not starting from scratch. We have the system. We all have our own local police departments. So I think that's the big question today is, I guess, trying to be less punitive or trying to reform the justice system now versus back then, where it was more about moral authority, because if there were, bandits or thieves and people like that were going to harm you, you're going to be more reliant on local law enforcement there. So I think that there's, the big, the system is the big difference between justice today.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I mean, to this day still don't agree on what that exactly means, but I think that's a big aspect of the book too, is that we do have to think about these things even today, because it's just always a question.
Yeah, definitely. How has writing stories of a hangman changed you?
I think I definitely look at everything from multiple angles. I think that's kind of just a part of the nature of it.
Yeah.
But personally, it's been a lot of fun. It's I've
Mhm.
enjoyed it. Some good book events, even though it's during COVID, but
Yeah.
got a lot of praise from it, and people I didn't know who would pick it up have read it and told me how much they love it. So that's been a lot of fun to see too.
That's so awesome. What do you want readers to think or feel after they finish reading the book?
I think they gotta just. It's more thought provoking, is what I want people to
Mhm.
walk away with. Just to whatever justice means to them, I just want them to find their own answer and just to reevaluate what they
Mhm.
think, and whatever the answer is, as long as that's true to you, I think that'd be more beneficial for everybody to just say, all right, this is definitely what I believe, and you're firmer in your beliefs now than when you started with the book. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. What were your inspirations that you modeled this novel after? Books or novels? I know in your bio you mentioned how much you like film as well. What were some of the other influences or inspirations?
Yeah, I think the big one for me was more of a inspiration on how to structure the story. It was
Mhm.
called it was on a Netflix movie called uh, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is a
Uh-huh.
Western, and it's split up into 6 different short stories pretty much. So to me that was like, oh, I don't have to write about him traveling from town to town. I can kind of just skip around to each chapter. So that
Mhm.
really helped take away some of the drag and get right to the action,
Yeah,
and make
yeah.
it more poignant. So I think that was definitely the spark. I'm sure there are tons of different books and movies that influence them. I'm sure readers will maybe have an idea of what those might be, or
Mhm.
similar books that they've read that might have gone along the same lines of themes. So, but I think that was definitely the spark of it.
Yeah. What's your earliest memory with being interested in the Western genre? Like I'm imagining, is there a little Ryan as a little kid? They can be a cowboy and sheriff or something like that.
That's a good question. I think it was probably later. I mean, I've always loved historical fiction in general, but
Yeah.
Westerns, I don't know if I really had a big spark for it until
Yeah.
later on. And even,
Yeah.
um, I would say not all my writing is about Westerns. So, but
Mhm.
I did want to check it off as an American writer, because that just seems like
Yeah.
fertile ground for something to write about. And it's kind of a staple of our culture, really, in the
Mhm.
art. So I'm glad that my debut is a part of that.
Yeah, definitely. And it does seem like, it's very intellectual, your interest in Westerns too, like you said, of this society trying to start from scratch and how rough that can be and what that entails. Would you ever want this novel adapted to a film? And if so, who would you cast as the hangman?
Yeah. I think if it had to be adapted, I think I'd probably like to be a part of it, just to kind of um, I don't know, just make sure it's done well, I guess, if that's not
Yes.
to brag or anything, but yeah, I definitely want it to be more of make sure my ideas come through for
Mhm.
sure. For casting, I have no idea. Would probably have to be a new talent that nobody's seen before, because
Mhm.
I think the protagonist is kind of an everyman. I think that's
Mhm.
so whoever can fit that role, good for them.
Yeah. Well, that's a great idea. Um, how has living in Wisconsin influenced your writing? You mentioned just being American and the tradition of Westerns, how that was such a good genre to pick. Living in Wisconsin, has there been any impact on your writing?
Definitely an appreciation for nature. I think
Mhm.
we're really blessed to have so many lakes and parks around here that
Mhm.
people can really just enjoy that. And the changing of the seasons too kind of helps us appreciate different things during different times of the year. So um,
Mhm.
yeah, kind of seeing like there's a flow to things. Not everything stays the same every once in
Yeah.
a while. I think that's definitely influenced my writing.
Oh, that's awesome. What advice would you give to aspiring writers?
Well, we talked about that before, but reading a lot
Yep.
helps. But you also have to write, you have to start writing. Because there have been a lot of days where it's just been no writing in a row, and you're just thinking like, well, how am I gonna get this done? So,
Mhm.
but I think uh, persevering, not giving up is the only way to do it. Um, there's no other way. You mentioned the first manuscript that I wrote. I worked on that for I worked on that through high school and college, tried to get it out to publishers, and nobody was interested. And so I just, had to have that tough talk with myself. It's like, we got to set this aside and start over. But I think that's just a big learning lesson too, is that you just have to do it until something works, and no matter how long it takes, success, I think will find you as long as you're determined.
That's really great advice. Yeah. Um, I think we might be ready for some question and answer. I know there's some questions waiting for us already.
Perfect.
Should we jump into those?
Let's.
Awesome. One question from someone watching on Facebook is, what was the road to publishing like for you?
That's that's interesting. I remember getting the call from the publisher, and I was just kind of stunned, like, "Oh, this is happening. Got it." um, and she asked me, like, "Do you have any questions?" And I just said no, because I was just like, I don't know what to ask. Where do we go
Yeah.
from here? You're supposed to tell me. This is my first time around. So, and she kind of laughed at that. So, um, but yeah, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails going over edits. Um, Even little things too, like page breaks, like what is that little image gonna look like? Um, but it was good experience for sure with Whitebird Publications. Uh, they didn't have any huge edits for me, nothing that I had to write extensively. So yeah, I would say that is definitely a great experience, because everything with COVID, it was mostly over the phone or email, so there wasn't really a whole lot of meeting in
Yeah.
person or those meetings. So um,
Mhm.
yeah, just there's a correspondence to it that was kind of not bare bones to say the least, but I think that yeah, a lot of good information and a big learning experience that I don't know if I can really describe it until you go through it yourself, because every
Yeah.
publisher is different for sure.
Yeah. And did you have a lot of say in, like, I saw that the cover design was by you, did you get to pick out a lot of what it looked like too?
Yeah, I mean, I just created the cover because I just like minimalistic art, and
Mhm.
that worked out for me. I
Mhm.
just thought, yeah, there you go. So, I mean, a lot of people really liked my designs that I asked, and so like, all right, well, we'll just go with that one. That one's easy. One less chain of emails going back and forth about the design.
Mhm.
I just definitely like that kind of artistic license.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you found a publisher that really fit your style, not only as a writer, but also just as you mentioned like minimalist style you liked, and it sounds like they liked that too.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier. They're great, and we definitely work together well as a team to actually
Mhm.
make this happen.
How did you find them?
Well, I searched through college using, I think it was like Duotrope or some other tool to find publishers, whether it was like university presses and whatnot, to find historical fiction and Western uh, accepting publishers. So, and I found their submission guidelines on their website and just gave it a shot.
That's awesome. Here comes some more questions.
Perfect.
Someone wanted to know, did you choose the font for your book as well?
Did I choose the font? No, I don't think I did, which was fine because it wasn't, it's a fine font. It wasn't distracting at all. So
Yeah. How much time do you spend writing each day?
oh man, I'm the wrong person to ask that because it's very inconsistent sometimes. But I try to do at least, a good day is writing an hour or two. But obviously that depends with plans pop up and all that. But I definitely try to stay determined and get something down on paper, at least any night that I'm free.
Yeah. Where do you get support in writing? Is it local or virtual writing reading groups? Are there professional organizations?
Yeah. I mean, I've befriended a lot of writers, a lot of Wisconsin writers that have been helpful, just kind of learning from them how they went through the publishing experience, where they find inspiration. But a lot of it was just kind of self-taught, asking professors and teachers about how does one get published, and with independent presses, you just got to follow the submission guidelines to a T, and hopefully you've constructed a good enough story for them to accept it.
Are there any classes or methods you recommend for aspiring authors?
I think taking a creative writing course definitely gives you an excuse to write. So I think that's, anything you can do to instigate that is great. I would say anything that gets you around stories, English classes, theater too, because that's just a huge, especially for dialogue, that's just a very important skill to learn. But yeah, anything that involves storytelling, take it. Just enroll as soon as you can.
Yeah. I like that point you make too about storytelling is not just in literature or English classes, but history has it, theater has it. Yeah, that's a great point. We got lots of questions. It's wonderful.
Oh, great. Let's have it.
Yeah. Another question is, your Hangman is parentless for most of the book. How did that impact how you wrote him?
I would definitely say there's a lot of isolation for him, especially with his profession. It's a heavy burden on him, and so when you're alone and you have this heavy burden on you, you just start to think a lot. So you definitely get to see his conscience throughout the book. So I think that made it more. It made it easier for us to see what he was thinking throughout. So I think that would made him a much more relatable protagonist.
How important do you feel a well-written prologue is to a book?
Well, I mean, it's a great start. It hooks people in, publishers too, but I think it sets the stage, and it's not the whole book, but it's definitely a good start. You just have to get the middle and end right too. But it's a great start.
Since you mentioned publishing again in that answer, I'm going to jump back to a publishing question.
Sure.
Someone asks, what was the most surprising part of publishing a debut?
I would say that just kind of the communication was just like emailing back and forth about edits, and then the design for the cover, other aspects of the book too. But other than that, it was pretty simple. there's not a whole lot to it that, from my experience, other than that. So I don't know what other people's ideas of getting published are like. That's just kind of the,
Yes.
yeah, it's just, a lot of emails, phone calls. But yeah, no, it's, I don't know, pretty simple. Pretty
Yeah,
straightforward.
yeah, that'll be interesting for you to compare as you continue to write and publish what the different experiences are. And also how you mentioned that maybe COVID affected this in a post-COVID publishing
Oh
situation.
yeah, I'm sure the whole
too.
writing experience will be different then.
Yeah, yeah. What was the most challenging part about publishing a debut?
Probably all the rejection, that's just always a tough part. You try to take constructive criticism as best you can, but trying to find the right publisher and bouncing back from that, persevering is very important. But
Mhm.
it all ended in a big success for me, so I'm very happy.
Yeah. What's one thing you wish you knew then that you know now?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure actually. I guess I would just keep reminding myself to like keep moving forward, and
Mhm.
maybe ask more questions or see what other writers have done in the past and how their publishing experiences have gone. I think those would be all very useful.
Mhm. More questions now about the book more than publishing.
Sure.
Another question is talking about Western tropes. What is your favorite Western trope?
My favorite Western trope. I don't know. Train robberies are great. They're just
Yeah.
they're just fun. Or the cavalry coming over the hill. You think everything's lost, but then there's one last ditch effort to save the heroes, or for the heroes to save whoever they need to save.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think or the classic, last standoff at the end of the movie. I'd say those
Yeah.
are definitely among my favorites.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite Western movies?
3:10 to Yuma, either the original or the newer one with Christian Bale and company. So those, and then The Searchers. That's a classic John Wayne movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say those are tied for first place.
Nice. What's your least favorite Western trope? If you have one.
Do I have one? I think that you have to, whatever happens in the end has to be authentic. And say I was watching one movie, the two protagonists kind of split apart, and then they came back together in the end. And to me, it's like you're still two angry guys who put so much into this journey, and now you're just gonna make up at the end. Like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I don't have I don't have a great answer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love westerns in general, so there aren't too many that would disappoint me.
Mhm. That question, I was wondering if you were going to answer something about, because something I was surprised about in the book, which I liked a lot, was that the female characters weren't just these flat characters that are in the background, where they're just like someone that works at the bar or is in prostitution or something, but there's like more to them than just that. And the native characters also, there was more to them, or the I think Asian characters, the ones that are recent immigrants working out in the West. I don't know if that's necessarily a trope, but I just thought of, from how I usually see them depicted in Westerns, you gave more dimension to their characters. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want any characters to seem like they're just there to be there. I definitely don't want characters to seem flat at all. So, and I think that there's just a lot of different perspectives from those characters that would be useful in telling the story, and it seems to work out. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially exploring justice. You don't want to just have the perspective of one sort of group. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Were there any stories you wrote that didn't make it into the book? And if so, would you use them in a different collection, or does it just get scrapped?
Well, the one that I had to get rid of because it was out of place, that one's scrapped, unfortunately,
Mhm.
for the interested readers. But I think I don't know, I just kind of made up these stories and they all seem to flow together and work. So I'm not disappointed with, leaving any of the other ones out. These ones
Mhm.
are fine with me.
Mhm. Did the isolation with COVID-19 that we've been experiencing as a society, did that influence when characters like the Hangman felt isolated? Did you kind of consider those experiences when you were writing it?
I'd written the first draft before COVID started, so a lot of it was the editing process. But I think that, um, a lot of people felt isolated during this time, and so I think that, um, just being alone with your thoughts is a theme that obviously the Hangman has to grapple with, and that we've all grappled with over these past 18 months or so.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's definitely relatable and can make sense to the reader.
Mhm. A follow-up question about um, like there's a story from a woman's perspective. There's a story with Native American perspectives. It says, was it difficult writing the scenes with the Native Americans' perspectives?
Um, I guess the only difficult thing for me was trying to make it seem original versus,
Mhm.
um, a typical story, one that, how should I put it?
Mhm.
I don't know, just try to challenge the kind of binary of that whole struggle, and try to make something that's unique and interesting that people might not have seen before.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you did that well, because the scene isn't just black or white justice necessarily, or it's not. I don't. The characters are complex. It's
Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. Um, there is a question for me. I did not expect to answer questions myself. It says, what is the experience of seeing students you taught publish a book like? And how does that impact you?
It's a
Well,
great
I'm
question.
very excited for you. Yeah. And I think because especially my first year teaching was when I had you as a student. I don't think I feel like I provided, lots of instruction for you. You really had a lot of skills already. So it's not necessarily from a point of pride in that, like, oh, I taught him everything he knows. Not at all. Um, but just really proud. Yeah. And it's so wonderful to see. And I'll definitely be telling my students about you and sharing your journey. And because, there's students like you still at Kimberly High School, who are
I appreciate that. That means
yeah,
a lot.
wanting to do this too. Yeah, yeah. What's next for you?
That's the question I've been asking since April. Just, I've just said, I'm enjoying the success of the book. Love hearing people's opinions on it. Gotten a lot of praise from it. So that's been really great. I would say I always love historical fiction and Westerns, especially. I just don't know if the next one's going to be. We're going to try to
Mhm.
explore different genres and see, but I'll definitely always have, a Western in my back pocket, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what are you currently reading, or what have you enjoyed reading recently?
I just started Spider Lake by Jeff Nania, one of the featured authors of this book festival. He and I became friends at another book event, and I read his first book of the series, Figure Eight, and now I'm on the second one, so I've enjoyed it so far.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, think I had a question about, instead of kind of following up from the next project question, how can people follow you to learn more? If you're going to be writing a new book or something, do you use social media, or do you have a website that people could go to?
Yeah, so Ryan Surprise author on Facebook and Instagram. People can check out there. I've just been keeping updates with the book festival lately, but I'm sure going forward, I'll keep people updated with whatever else I'm writing next.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. I know it says in your bio that you've traveled a lot. You've traveled to 3 continents and you love exploring the natural beauty of the Northern Midwest. Do you have any travel planned coming up that you're looking forward to?
I would definitely say getting out as much as I can. We've been cooped up for a long time, but yeah, I'm not sure. Definitely staying here in the Midwest. Winter's getting closer. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I love it. Being outside. So, but yeah, there's a lot to explore here and outside of the US. So I guess I'm just waiting on more recommendations, and then I'll put it on my list and check it out.
And then I know a lot of people they love fall in Wisconsin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is winter your favorite though in Wisconsin?
Yeah, which is kind of strange because I used to hate it, but now I've kind of grown appreciative of it. But yeah, I mean, I love the changing of the seasons, summer to fall, and then winter. Just I don't know, everything just looks so nice with snowfall in the trees and all that. Everything's so quiet because nobody, not a lot of people are out and about. So yeah, I like going on walks or skiing, and yeah, that's always been one of the more peaceful experiences that I've had.
Well, maybe an idea for your next story will come to you while you're cross-country skiing or having that time for reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. So ideas come.
Well, it was so great to see you again, Ryan, and to talk with you.
Yeah, this was so much fun.
Yeah. And I think a presenter, of the festival will wrap this up as well for us. But before she did, I just wanted to tell you that, Ryan, it was great to get to chat with you again, and very excited for you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Josie, for being here and interviewing Ryan and leading our conversation. It's been really great. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing a lot. As someone that hears a lot at the library, we need more Westerns. We're like, why does no one write new Westerns? Thank you for giving us not only a fresh Western, but also from a local author as well, to hopefully, I think, introduce new audiences to the genre too. So thank you for being a part of the festival and sharing, and we look forward to seeing what's next from you as well. Know you always have an invitation here at the Fox Cities Book Festival. To our audience, thanks for joining us. This is just the first event of many today, so please be sure to visit foxcitiesbookfestival.org to see what's next and who we'll be chatting with as the day continues. If you did appreciate today's event and the festival, we greatly appreciate all of our sponsors and support making the festival possible. You'll see in your chat box different ways that you can help us as we are already planning for our 2022 festival. The recording for this event will also be available on the Fox Cities Book Festival Facebook page. So if you missed any portion of it or you want to share it with your family and friends, direct them to the festival Facebook page to watch it there. Josie, Ryan, thank you again for being here and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, you as well.